this may be, excuse me, this may be a very distracted video because it's only -1, 30 degrees American, but the roads are ice. So I'm hoping once I hit the well-traveled roads that won't be the case, in which case I'll be able to concentrate a bit more on life in general. But at the moment I'm on side roads and it was pretty nasty. Of course, what I've got to be careful about is black ice, and for those of you who don't know, that's where there's pooled water that looks like it's wet, but it's actually solid ice. I'm hoping with the temperature being -1 that the heat of tires going over any small accumulations of water will be enough to stop it from refreezing. But if you know what I mean, just the traction of the weight of the cars and everything else. So we will find out the hard way, I guess. A couple of things. This would be, just to give you a heads up, this is going to be a vlog about loss at 2 levels. Number 1, last night I watched the ceremony saying goodbye to Nelson Mandela. I know it was in the middle of the night my time, but I was in South Africa at the time that he was in Robben Island, or on Robben Island rather than in, or both. And I felt a strange connection enough that I did want to, in my own way, be a small part of that just for a few hours. And I did. And I was sad. I was sad for the family and sad for the world, because I really do think that his contribution to the world was huge. And as in all deaths like this, there will be conspiracy theories that he actually died 3 months ago, or whatever it is, and this is all political timing and so forth, and who knows the truth. So don't be surprised if you hear that. There will always be those sort of stories that come after an event like this. The point being that how do you get that many leaders together on the same day? You know, just amazing how many world leaders there were. And I think that says it all. And to me, it was just surprising, I guess, in a way, that they gave Winnie Mandela as much positive press as they did. I understand what she did to keep the ball rolling while he was in jail, but boy, she did it in some pretty ruthless ways, and so that's my bias. You know, I have a lot of respect for Mandela because what he did when he got out of jail was peaceful. Anyway, my stuff. So at the same time, I know that there is somebody else out there hurting. One of our viewers told me such a sad story about 2 friends who went out together. And only one came home. I cannot describe the agony of not just losing your brother, but losing your brother right next to you. Because basically, if I understand the story correctly, that's what happened. And so I wanted to just say that I have some small understanding of losing somebody that close. I lost my best friend when I was just 18. And as some of you already know, I lost her because I did up the seat belt that they couldn't undo when she was in a crash. And I remember only too well the feeling that I had when I heard that she had died. And then the total agony I felt when I heard why she had died. And I'm just going to repeat something that I did. I did a life lesson on loss about a year ago. And I just want to repeat some of those facts for anybody else that might be hurting in this way. One of the things that is important to understand is that we go through a cycle in loss. And it's made up of many, many different parts, but the main ones, and number one, we go through that instant denial. No, that can't have happened. And then we go into anger. How could that possibly have happened? And with that anger can come blame. It's amazing what we can blame ourselves for. Why didn't I see this happening? Why, in my case, why did I do up the seatbelt? Or why couldn't the fireman undo the seatbelt? And I'm going to use my personal experience here as the example only because I don't want to relive the pain for other people too much. And so I remember that anger extremely well. What was wrong with those firefighters that they didn't cut her out? Even if she couldn't undo the seatbelt, why didn't they cut her out? And so there's also anger at God. How could he have let such a good person go? How is that possible? And you will find that over the coming months, you will fluctuate between the denial, the anger, and then that incredible sadness, which is the next step. The sadness of knowing that this really did happen. And those three things, sort of denial, anger, and acceptance, will play backwards and forwards. You know, some days you're going to be in total sadness. And some days you're going to sort of be ricocheting between the three. We all do grief in our own peculiar way. There is no right way to do grief, and you need to know that. And for some people, depending on your emotional ability, some people can process all of this in a very short space of time. And some people never recover, quite honestly. A few will never recover. But it has something to do with how you start off the process. So if you are a very practical person, when I say very practical, if you don't let your emotions rule your heart or your life, if you are that sort of a person, you can take a loss like this and deal with it. I mean, you still feel terrible sadness and anger and all the rest of it, but the way in which you deal with it is very different. It's far faster. And then on the other end of that scale, if you are a very emotional person, somebody that's allowed your emotions to rule your life, then to have somebody close to you get taken away becomes very personal to you. When of course it isn't. It just is what it is, if you know what I mean. But you'll find that you can get to take this very personally, and it can not only ruin your day or your week or your month, for some people it can ruin their lives. Because they don't have the emotional ability to be able to deal with this. Now, there is the whole gamut of in between that. And because I can never really know who you are, the person who's listening to this, I need to cover all those, that whole spectrum, because any part of it could be where you are. You could be that very practical person who can process this fairly quickly and just go, okay, fine, this has happened, I can't change it. I'm very sad, but I'm not going to completely lose it over this, you understand? And just perhaps be somebody who processes in a non-emotional way, probably doesn't cry, just gets on with organizing things and clearing the house of memories. You know, it's really amazing the different ways that people can cope. Now, some will say if you don't cope with it at the time of the loss, you will be coping with it for the rest of your life. So if you are the sort of person who can do that, you need to really make sure that your doctor knows exactly what's going on for you, exactly how you are processing this. You know, if you're not sleeping well, you're obviously not going to sleep well in the short term, but if a couple of weeks later you're still not sleeping well or sleeping properly, your doctor needs to know about this. For those of you who are younger, an adult needs to know about this. When you have a hit like this to your psyche, and to your soul, quite honestly, it's very, very difficult. And for those of you who are regular watchers, you will know I talk about mojo juice, that any sort of major trauma or stress will deplete you of energy, or mojo juice as I call it. And sometimes it takes quite a while to replenish, to rebuild up that energy so that you can function normally again. So after a loss like this, don't be surprised if you feel very weak for some time. Don't be surprised if you are absolutely fine one moment and then sobbing your heart out in another. That's normal. Do what you can, though, to protect yourself. In other words, if you can, do those sobbing moments in a safe environment, maybe in the washroom quietly, or away from the public, so that you can just try and keep some control. And if you can't, that's okay. The after a while, and I can't tell you how long because, as I said, it's very personal, but after a while, you're going to start finding acceptance. And some people can find acceptance in quite a short time because they can intellectualize it all and go, okay, but I understand it, and now I need to just accept it. And it is strange because then they go through almost a guilt of they feel guilty if they laugh. They feel guilty if they smile. They feel guilty just for living. And I think that's when you really need to, if you can, have a good look at this. Whether you are a believer or not, look at this and say, you must believe in something. And something will tell you either that this was what it was, a tragic, tragic accident, or that it wasn't your time. And that you were saved so that you could do more with your life. And those who are very strong believers will also believe that if you were meant to go, you would have gone. It wasn't a sort of an accident that you were saved. It was with purpose. And then, of course, those will also believe that there was a purpose why the other person was taken. And they were taken for a good reason. They were needed elsewhere. So it doesn't really matter where you sit on that, whether you're a strong believer or not. Any part of it is as difficult as it is to understand right now. This just is what it is. It's horrible and it hurts and it's painful, and I'm sure that some of you are saying it's not fair. Why did it have to happen to me? One of the things I will tell anybody who's going through any sort of a loss is, please do not punish yourself unnecessarily with the question why. You know, why was one person taken, not the other? Why did this have to happen? Why? This is really punishing yourself because who knows the answer? You cannot know the answer to that. And quite honestly, there are probably as many answers as questions of why. And who knows what the correct one is? It's not for us to know at this time. Again, if you have any sort of faith, I really recommend that you speak with your minister, rabbi, or whoever your person of spiritual leadership is. Really recommend that you take some time. If you have what they call employee assistance programs, and most companies in North America, I think, do have that. If you have an extended health program, the chances are that you have an employee assistance program, and that allows you to get special counseling for things like grief. That you actually, can go and get some help around this. Some of you will be smart enough to maybe even join a grief group, a group of people similar to yourself who have all lost somebody very close to them. And they do their processing together. In other words, there's something very, very healing about knowing you're not the only one that is struggling to this extent. And I really would encourage male or females to do that if they are able. Now, a lot of us grew up in an environment that said, in our family we don't do stuff like that. Well, such a pity, because it can help you move through the grieving process far more quickly. You're going to move through it anyway. Why wouldn't you do it in a way that brings you back your life more quickly? So, when you complete this circle of grieving, every now and then it can come back and replay parts of it. In other words, you may think you're completely over. Okay, that's it. You start off slowly going, wow, I think this moment I didn't grieve. And you feel almost guilty about that. And then you'll find that for 5 minutes you didn't grieve. And then as you start to get more processing done, maybe half an hour. And then you'll notice that, wow, I made it through a couple of hours where I was able to function normally. And that's how it happens. You just do a little bit of recovery at a time, a little bit of healing. And then please do not beat up on yourself because you were able to do that. Don't think that you don't care or that you should be grieving more. Be very grateful for the moments that you are out of pain, emotional pain. But you'll get to the point where maybe you can do a day. And that can take you a long time, but you go almost a day without being in that pain. And then maybe even a few days or a week. But don't be surprised if every now and then that anger or that sadness comes back. And just understand it's part of that cycle, just little bits that still need to be processed. And for most of us, it will last to some degree all their lives. They also say, and it's been my experience as well, having lost a number of people close to me, that the first year is the most difficult. Because the most difficult time is going through, let's say, for example, at this time of year, your first Christmas without that person, or your first Valentine's Day, even if you were with friends, your first Easter, your first birthday, your first, you know what I mean, all those firsts, first Thanksgiving, all those things are very, very difficult to do. And I'm not saying that the second year is way easier, but by the second year, that instant retching pain has healed to some degree, not all, but to some. And then as each year passes, you will have memories and you will be sad, but the stabbing pain that you feel hopefully will not be there. And as I said at the beginning of this, there is no right way. And the sad thing is how many people will tell you, well, you've been grieving this now for X amount of time, you should be over it by now. We all take our own time. However, some people, as I said at the outset, some people do not have the emotional ability to be able to process huge loss. And therefore, they will continue to be in pain. They can't get to a rational place on this. They'll just relive it and relive it and relive it for whatever reason. And if you are that person, then you do need to make sure your doctor knows about it and that you're getting help. Because that is not the process. So at what point do you say, okay, fine, I've struggled enough, and it should be easier for me now? And what time do you say, I may never be over this? I think that's a discussion you need to have with your doctor, your medical professional, because they will know you better. They will know how well you process things, have a better understanding of your emotional intelligence, will have a better understanding of your ability to cope with life. And therefore they will be able to advise you better. On the good side, and I know that sounds cruel to say there is a good side, it has been my experience that you do, in time, process all the bits, or most of them. And in time, you will smile again. And in time, you will laugh again. And one of the things that I would really encourage you to do is spend your time not on the sadness of the friendship or the love or whatever, but on the positives. And this is equally so whether this was, a loved one that you lost, or even for some of you it's going to be about maybe a pet that you lost. Work very hard to work on remembering the good times, not the loss.